YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 10 articles for you in this episode this morning. In the description of this video for your convenience, if you want to pull anything up for your research. The first one here is off of newswithviews.com, and it says, Trump stands solidly on terrorists. Congress passed the McCarran-Walter Act that gives a sitting president the authority to restrict immigration into the United States and removal of anyone determined in subversive activities. And Obama used it. With the terror attacks within our country in the past year, Trump needs to use it and expand it to Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Ethiopia, and more. Prove hotbeds for Muslim terrorists training for their jihad against America. The refugee program remains their ticket to killing our citizens. Revised one of his executive orders to kick Russian diplomats out of the United States. McCarran-Walter, co-author of, were both Democrats. Harry Truman, also a Democrat, voted, but the Congress overrode. Truman was a Democrat, progressive in the same vein as today's progressives. President Truman and Teddy Roosevelt were considered founders of the progressive movement, said George Phelps, former U.S. Army officer. Obama's EO 13694, the imposition of sanctions on individuals and entities determined to be responsible for or complicit in malicious cyber activities that result in harms that are reasonably likely to result in or have materially a significant threat to security, foreign policy, or economic health stability of the United States. According to the law, President Trump maintains complete authority to restrict entry of immigrants from designated countries based on the McCarran-Walter Act, and Obama used an executive order to do the same thing when he had the Russian diplomats removed from the United States. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, it gives all the numbers and all that behind it if you want to pull that up to read that, also known as the McCarran-Walter Act, restricted immigration into the U.S. or codified under Title 8 of the United States Code. The act governs primary immigration to citizenship in. It has been in effect since December 24th of 1952. Before this act, a variety of statutes governed immigration law, but were not organized within text. H.R. 5678 was named after its sponsors, Senator Pat McCarran, Democrat of Nevada, and Congressman Francis Walter, Democrat of Pennsylvania. President Harry Truman, a Democrat, vetoed the act because as un-American and discriminatory. It was overridden by a veto of 278 to 113 in the House and 57 to 26 in the Senate. The Senate, on March the 2nd of 1953, McCarran said, "I believe that is the last hope of Western civilization, and this oasis of the world shall be overrun, contaminated, or destroyed. Then the last flickering light of humanity will be extinguished. I take no issue with those who would praise which have made our society by people of varied creeds and colors. However, we have in the United States today hardcore, indigestible blocks integrated into the American way of life, but which, on the contrary, are its deadly enemies. Never before, untold millions are storming our gates for admission, and those gates are cracking under the strain. The solution of the problem of Europe and Asia will not come through a transplanting of those problems en masse to the United States. I do not intend to become prophetic, but if the enemies of this legislation succeed in riddling it to pieces or in amending it beyond recognition, they will have contributed more to promote this nation's downfall than any other group since we achieved our independence as a nation." The act abolished racial restrictions found in the United States immigration and naturalization statutes going back to the Naturalization Act in 1790, the 1952 Act quota system for nationalities and regions. The act established a preference system which determined ethnic groups were desirable immigrants and placed great importance on labor qualifications. The act defined three types of immigrants: immigrants with special skills, citizens who were exempt and who were to be admitted without restrictions, average immigrants whose numbers were not supposed to exceed 270,000 per year, and refugees. The act allowed the government to deport immigrants or naturalized citizens engaged in subversive activities, and also allowed the barring of suspected subversives from entering the country. It was used to bar members and foreign members and fellow travelers of the Communist Party from entry into the United States, even those associated with the party for decades. This video showing Muslim marching in Chicago recently that read "Death to America" shows you why Trump needs to enforce this previous act. Definition of the United States for nationality purposes, which already included Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Persons born in the territories on or after December 24th, 1952, acquired U.S. citizenship at birth on the same terms as persons born in other parts of the United States. Guidelines explained procedures under the Act. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 requires an alien to apply for a petition. This form may be obtained from any office of the Immigration and Naturalization Service, a division of the Department of Justice, or from any court authorized to naturalize aliens. Today, more than ever, we need to keep Muslims out of our country. Chicago with the banner "Death to America" indicates the trauma of our future immigrants. The next article is off of the dailymail.co.uk. It says, attack on Israel is foiled when missiles fired from Egypt are shot down by Tel Aviv's Iron Drone system. 4 rockets were fired into southern Israel in the attack on Wednesday. 3 missiles were intercepted by the missile defense system. The missile that was not intercepted fell into open ground short of the town, where you can see more about the latest Islamic State news and updates on ISIS attacks. This article continues. Islamic State has claimed responsibility for rocket fired on Israel launched from Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. During the attack, 4 projectiles were fired into southern Israel, where 3 were intercepted by Iron Dome systems to the Israeli Defense Force Southern Command. The Israeli Army said Wednesday evening's rocket fire did not cause any casualties or any damage to property. A total of 11 people were treated for shock. Just Fatal Hospital, I think it's pronounced, following the attack, including Australian tourists, 4 holiday makers, and half a dozen local residents, the Jerusalem Post reports. That was not intercepted fell into open ground short of the town. In this, if you'd like to pull that up and take a look at that. It continues saying, alone, a military platoon fired several rockets yesterday towards Eilat. The jihadist Egyptian affiliate said the statement circulated on social media. The incident came just hours after a mortar reportedly fell in the Golan Heights in Levant near the Syrian border fence. Caused any known casualties or damage. The IDF said that it had struck a target in northern Syrian Golan. Islamic State has waged a deadly insurgency against Egyptian security forces in the Sinai, but attacks on Egyptian territory are rare. In 2011, assailants who came from Sinai killed 8 Israelis in a triple ambush, after which pursuing Israeli forces killed 7 attackers and 5 Egyptian police. In 2013, 4 jihadists were killed by an Egyptian airstrike as they were about to fire a rocket at Israel, according to the Egyptian military. 2 Israeli soldiers on patrol are wounded and identified by unidentified men who fired a weapon from the Sinai during an attempted drug smuggling operation, according to the Israeli military. 18 rockets fired from Sinai hit southern and without causing any casualties in an attack that is claimed responsibility, or ISIS claimed responsibility for. The Iron Dome has not intercepted rockets bound for Eilat since 2014, when it stopped missiles during the fight with Hamas, trip codenamed Operation Protective Edge by the IDF. The system is designed to intercept and destroy short-range missiles fired from distance of 2.5 miles to 43 miles away, would take them to a populated area. The article is off of rickwells.us. State Department whistleblower, no real refugee vetting in 7 travel ban nations. Employee of the United States State Department recently retired after 8 years as refugee coordinator throughout the Middle East, Russia, and Cuba. Fully supports the extreme vetting executive order of President Donald Trump, which threat from the perspective of one who's seen it all firsthand and lived it. She thinks even more needs to be done, and quickly. For her 7th letter to the Chicago Tribune, I fully support President Donald Trump's executive order that temporarily halts admissions from the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program and bans travel from nationals of countries that potentially pose a security risk to the United States. However, I don't think the action goes far enough. There are many people throughout the country who feel the same way. As a recently retired 25-year veteran of the United States Department, served almost 8 years as a refugee coordinator throughout the Middle East, Cuba, I have seen firsthand the abuses and the fraud that permeate the refugee program and know about the entrenched interests that fight and implement much needed reform. Despite claims of enhanced vetting, the reality is that it is virtually impossible to vet an individual who has no type of an official record, particularly in countries compromised by terrorism. U.S. immigration officials simply rely on the person's first and fabricated testimony. I've personally seen this on hundreds of occasions. As a refugee coordinator, I saw the exploitation, inconsistencies, and security lapses in the program, and I advocated strongly for change. The past decade, and specifically under the Obama administration, the program continued to expand blindly, seemingly without concern for security or whatever it served of its own citizens. Questionable resettlement of refugees from Malta to the United States grew substantially, despite the fact that as a European country with a functioning asylum system, refugees should have remained there under the internationally accepted concept of the country's first asylum. The special in-country refugee programs in Cuba and Russia continue, although they are laden with fraud and far too often simply admit economic rather than actual refugees. As an insider who understands its operations, weaknesses, I believe the refugee program must change dramatically, must allow the president to fully implement the order. Signed, Mary Doach. The next article that I have for you is off of Liberty Writers. And it says, urgent. Trump just published a list of the 78 terror attacks the media does not want you to know about. Donald Trump did something that Obama would have never had the courage or honesty or dignity to do. 78 terror attacks in the past 2 years that the media refused to cover correctly. Of course, you can bet the media is already freaking out, claiming that they covered many of these more than enough. Nonsense. Just take a look at these and decide for yourself. Here are the 10 worst terror attacks on Trump's list. Number 1, Hassan, Egypt, killed in a downing of a Russian airliner. Number 2, Paris, France, November of 2015. At least 129 killed and approximately 400 wounded in a series of shootings and IED attacks. Number 3, Istanbul, Turkey, in June of 2016. 45 killed and approximately 240 wounded at International Airport. Number 4, Orlando, Florida, U.S., June of 2016. 49 killed and 53 wounded in shooting at a nightclub. Number 5, Soch, Tunisia, June of 2015. 38 killed and 39 wounded in shooting at beach frequented by Westerners. Number 6, Brussels, Belgium, March of 2016. 1 killed and 270 wounded in coordinated bombings at Stem Airport and on a subway train. Dhaka, Bangladesh, July of 2016. 22 killed, including 1 American and 50 wounded after hours-long siege and firearms at Holy Artisan Bakery. Number 8, Tunis, March of 2015. 21 tourists killed, including 16 Westerners, and 55 wounded in shooting at the Bardo Museum. Number 9, San Bernardino, California, U.S. 14 killed and 21 wounded in coordinated firearms attack. Number 10, Kabul, Afghanistan, June of 2016. Suicide attacks on a bus carrying Canadian embassy guards. List of all 78 of these attacks here in this article, if you want to pull them up and take a look at them for yourself. Concludes with, there you have it. Despite a few minor spelling errors, which the White House needs to work on, this is a very important list. We need to do our part and make this go viral so everyone can see what the media has been hiding from us. The article is off of townhall.com. Terror threat. Venezuela has been selling official passports to anyone willing to pay. According to a new investigative report from CNN, the Venezuelan government has been issuing official passports to any individual willing to pay for one in Iraq, even if they have ties to terrorism. Working in the Venezuela ambassador to Iraq alleges workers in the embassy have been making millions of dollars off the practice, putting the lives of people living in the Western countries at risk. One confidential intelligence document obtained by CNN links Venezuela's new Vice President, Tariq Assami, to 173 Venezuelan passports and IDs that were issued to individuals from the Middle East, including people connected to the terrorist group Hezbollah. Is a close ally of Iran, the backer of Hezbollah, and extremely hostile to the United States. Hezbollah is terrorist organization in the world. Before 9/11 was responsible for more American deaths than any other terrorist organization. The group operates in 40 countries and on 5 continents, including operations in at least 15 U.S. cities and 4 major Canadian cities. Those traveling on a Venezuelan passport must obtain to enter the United States, but can enter 130 other countries without one, which has taken over large swaths of Iraq and Syria, has hundreds of millions of dollars at its disposal to purchase passports. Additionally, the terror army has set up their own fraudulent passport system. President Trump executive order barring all refugees and visa holders from 7 countries, including Iraq, Syria, without proper vetting procedures. The article concludes, but if you story yesterday afternoon, that travel ban has been overturned. I have to wait and see how that all turns out. The article I have for you is off of with Dave Hodges. It says, does one size fit all? Of Garcia de Reos. Purposes of the temporary immigration ban on the 7 Middle Eastern countries is to keep, or who would do America harm and disrupt our society through criminal activities as evidenced a person's criminal past. I wholeheartedly support President Trump's temporary ban on immigration until proper screening methods and procedures can be set up with regard to a potential immigrant's possible terrorist and or criminal background. America has no obligation to admit criminals. However, there is a right way to do it. The detention of an illegal immigrant sparked a protest Wednesday outside the U.S. Immigration and Customs Office in Phoenix that resulted in 7 arrests as crowds blocked ICE on nearby streets. Is enacting a new and controversial policy or enforcing a previous ignored policy, one has to be concerned about getting the public support. In that regard, we have the case of Guadalupe Garcia de Reos, age 36, arrived at the ICE Phoenix regional office for her routine check-in, but instead of being released, as she was under Obama's state of executive order, under President Trump's illegal immigration crackdown, she was detained and will be deported. Age 36 was considered a low priority for a deportation under the Obama administration and had to check in with ICE officials every 6 months. A conviction, identity theft. Public reported the was in support of her need to get a job. Yes, she broke the law, and Trump's forces are acting within the law to deport her. However, this woman has 2 underage children who were born here. Guadalupe was brought here when she was only 14. Does not care about public support, then this is just another deportation case, and all the noise it generates will only be background noise. Can serve as galvanizing point for the left of the underage children belonging to the mother, and the fact did not come to America on her own volition is an issue. Reportedly fears she could be deported to Mexico. Reyes is currently being detained by ICE based on a removal order issued by the Department of Justice Executive Office for Immigration Review, which became final in May of 2013. Read. This person and her case will become the poster child for what is inhumane about a one-size-fits-all policy. I am not even agreeing with what I have written. However, this case poster child by the liberals. I know what you're thinking. She broke the law, and the law is being properly applied. I just hope of winning a battle on the way to losing the war. The president is absolutely correct in establishing the temporary ban on immigration from the seven Middle Eastern countries singled out by Obama. However, and again, Trump is missing the boat when it comes to using finesse when establishing a policy. Trump needs to establish lengthy vetting process right now today. No judge has the authority to set time limit on processing of immigrants. It is the processing period that could be weeded out for further security checks. In this manner, nobody has been denied admittance. They are simply going through a process, the process which can serve as filter to keep of the immigrants who would pose a danger. Must avoid the perception of being inhumane is going to grow. America will side with a mom and her children regardless of what the law says. Disagree, I would say that the bull in the china closet right approach when one is trying to win over the country. Trump needs to support the people more than any other president because he is vehemently opposed by senators and congressmen who support the free trade agreements. Support, which must be forced through the actions of the people, Trump will not be able to achieve. Hardliner finesse, when to employ each. As you can no doubt tell, I am torn on this issue. Should Trump worry about the perception? Drop me a line in the comments section. For myself, I am Christian before I am an American. I have vowed to do no harm to any human being, but I support my president in controlling the border. Moral dilemma. I worry about her children and who will care for them. They are Americans. Let me know what you think. And there's some comments in the bottom of this if you want to. Sometimes some of that stuff gets pretty interesting. I mean, if you want my take, yep, she broke the law. She needs to be deported. She can either settle her kids here with somebody or take them with her. But then I'm a hard ass, so that's why they don't put me in charge of anything. Of a BizPack review, European shock poll on immigration is everything the mainstream media doesn't want you to believe. Mainstream media cohorts are currently in a tizzy over a temporary travel ban involving a Muslim majority countries. However, about we kick it up a notch and ban all immigration from Muslim majority countries. Given how progressive Europe has become over the past generation, the fact that a new shock poll highlights a major shift in public sentiment regarding immigration from Muslim majority countries is more than a little stunning and heartening. Based think tank Chatham House released a wide-ranging survey of over 10,000 people from 10 European states. In it, the question was asked, all further migration from mainly Muslim countries should be stopped. The overall average across all 10 European countries was 55% who agreed with the statement, 25% were neutral on the issue, and only 20% disagreed. The survey was conducted before President Trump's travel ban from 7 specific Muslim majority countries, but it comes from citizens of nations that have historically experienced much more than the United States has. While the U.S. Muslim population currently stands around 1%, the European countries have much higher percentages, from Germany's over 6% to France between 8 and 10%. Indeed, this could be evidence that Europeans are beginning to wake up from their decade-long political slumber. The globalists in power purposefully increase their Muslim population by a percentage every decade, to the point where many citizens are weary of the societal, crime, and budgetary problems incurred by importing third worlders from backward cultures and failed states. Majorities in 8 of the 10 countries supported the ban, with Poland leading the pack at 71%. The United Kingdom and Spain bring up the rear with 47 and 41% respectively. The highest percentage that actually disagreed with the statement was 32%. Of their survey, Chatham House writes, our results are striking and sobering. They suggest that the public opposition to any further migration from predominantly Muslim states is by no means Trump's electorate, but is fairly widespread. On the O'Reilly Factor Wednesday evening, the Heritage Foundation, Niall Garnier, calls for the survey one of the most important seen. Last Thursday, thousands of Muslims took to the streets of New York City to protest Trump's temporary travel ban. Long for astute observers to note the lack of women participating in the protest. Perhaps Americans can learn from the mistake of Europe before we continue along the process of repeating them. It's off of Daily Dose. And it says, Muslims believe SpongeBob was designed to make kids gay. I cannot make this stuff up. The headline you just read is not a joke, it's real. Muslim Ayman recently said on TV that SpongeBob was created by the Jews to turn young children gay. According to a recent report from the Express, only 1 in every 10,000 Muslim refugees are employed in Germany. There is a reason that less than 100 refugees have been hired by German companies. Incredibly stupid people. the man speaking actually believes what he is saying. He isn't trying to manipulate people to believe something that he knows is a lie. He believes it. Pull that up and take a look at that for yourself. Man. Here is off of freedomdaily.com. It says, Minnesotan pissed after calling for more Muslim refugees gets nasty surprise when he opens his door. Get it to scroll up here. Minnesota has rolled out the welcome mat for Muslim refugees at the urging of the state's governor, Mark Dayton, who convinced citizens that they are better people than other states for doing so. After this happened, and despite President Trump's travel ban, one man learned the hard way that the damage was already done when he walked out his front door for a cigarette and got a sickening surprise. Is aimed at appeasing their personal agenda of overthrowing Trump at all costs, regardless of whose safety is at stake. Dayton fought tooth and nail for refugees, insisting that they wanted nothing more than a better life, were escaping. He was the guy to give it to them and feel as a hero to the wrong people and create victims out of those who may or may not have voted for these new neighbors. MT reports that on Sunday night, a 33-year-old man from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, simply stepped out for his last cigarette of the day at 10:40 p.m. when he opened his front door to a horrifying refugee welcome. At the exact time he walked outside to light up, two cars reportedly filled with suspects that the victim described as Somalis pulled up and parked in front of his home. Somali men emerged from one of the vehicles and opened fire on the victim, who didn't know, certainly hadn't provoked the attack, according to police. And there's some video in this if you want to pull that up to. It says the man was shot twice while attempting to escape back into his home for protection from these supposed refugees. Despite running from the scene for cover and being directly hit 2 times, the innocent Minnesota man had 7 wounds from the random assault, 2 bullets penetrating his body, KIMT reported. While the victim suffered non-life-threatening physical injuries, of liberalism that allows refugees into America unchecked for under the Obama and his state's own governor. Political correctness, injuries, and or kills. An adjustment to our country's immigration policies isn't about bigotry. It's about common sense and safety, which everyone who is anti-Trump can't after an innocent man gets shot because of it. Police have yet to identify and arrest the assailants. This time is unknown, as the innocent incident is under investigation. If this was a random attack by refugees, places, and is ingrained in those people who come to work in America, Trump's intent is to keep the country in the home of the brave, which requires sacrificing multiculturalism to make it happen. So there you have that. And the final one I have in this episode, CNET.com, and it says Syrian refugees sue Facebook to stop fake news. Anas Madami's photo with German Chancellor Angela Merkel has been used in posts about terrorism. Stop. And here's how this reads. A selfie with German Chancellor Angela Merkel has reportedly turned from a moment of pride into a nightmare for Syrian refugee Madami. The shot from September of 2015 in Berlin went viral, appearing in newspapers and other media. The photo was also being used in fake news posts about terrorism, including some about the attacks in Brussels. I saw my picture posted on a story about Brussels airport bombing, but of course this was not me. My old CNN money. I thought immediately, what does this mean? What about my future? Is this really no joke now? This is serious. Sued Facebook in Germany over those fake news posts. According to CNN Money, he is seeking an injunction on or in a German court that would require Facebook to stop the selfie from being used in fake news posts. He is also asking for all existing fake news posts to be deleted. The case was heard Monday, and a ruling is expected on March the 3rd, according to the New York Times. Madnami didn't respond to a request for comment. It's committed to following German law in relation to on its site. We have already quickly disabled access to content that has been accurately reported to us by Mr. Madnami's legal representative, so we do not believe here is necessary or that it is the most effective way to resolve the situation, said a spokesman in an emailed statement. We will continue to respond to Mr. Madnami's legal representatives in relation to any other content of concern to them that appear to be legitimate have been a problem for the world's largest social network for at least a year, but they've gained even more attention since the 2016 US presidential election. Facebook has been criticized for letting deliberately false articles go unchecked during the election. The company has also faced questions regarding censorship and what should or shouldn't be allowed on the site. Days after the election, CEO called it crazy to think Facebook's newsfeed affected the results, and the company has been taking steps to help its users separate the real from the fabricated. In particular, has scrutinized Facebook more. The country will elections in September, and there have been growing worries over fake news like the U.S. has seen. It is considered penalizing social networks if they don't respond to complaints of hate speech and fake news within 24 hours. Meanwhile, Germany has mixed feelings about refugees. Millions of refugees and migrants fled to Europe from the Middle East and Africa all over the past couple of years, creating a humanitarian crisis that spread throughout the European Union. Hundreds of thousands of them in squalid refugee camps in Greece, France, and Serbia, blocked from traveling farther by bureaucracy and closed borders. In 2015 alone, nearly 1.1 million people registered for asylum in Germany. Initially was welcoming to refugees, helping them find jobs and adjust to life in their new country. But no European country has received as many requests for asylum as Germany, according to the UN. And with news of violent crimes like the wave of sexual assaults in Cologne or on New Year's Eve 2015, and the attack on a holiday market in Berlin in December has sparked a backlash against Merkel's open door policy. I have for you in this episode. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. I have more episodes for you, so stay tuned. And if you haven't subscribed yet, stay informed.